Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Welcome to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. I'm your host Alex, and today I'm joined by the incredible Cass and Kieran.
Hey guys, how you going?
Good. How you doing, Kieran? Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How was everyone's weekends?
I've been sick, so not great.
Great.
The weather's just been, a lot of soup, a lot of in bed, a lot of Netflix, but I can't complain.
Kieran, can you beat that?
My work-life balance is terrible, so I've just been working all weekend.
Come on, guys. I went to a wedding, I went to a Bucks night, and I went to Illuminate. Come on. You're letting the team down here.
You're killing it, Alex. Go you. Well, it's been another massive week of news, and we have a fantastic show for you tonight. One of our newest journalists, Maggie, makes her Wavelength debut by interviewing drag queen Kane Enable and co-owner of My Lover Cindi, Rachel Hosking.
And later on, Brayden talks you through the Vickers Vimy in Wavo Explains, and we let you know all the good news that's happened this week.
But before all that, we have Ben and Grace, who spoke with Lee Cumberlidge from Illuminate Adelaide to shed a light on Adelaide's winter festival season.
Wavelength.
Illuminate Adelaide is back again for its second season, with its captivating light installations scattered across the city to celebrate local, national and international artists. The event was created by co-founders and creative directors Rachel Party and Lee Cumberlidge. After working on projects such as the 2006 Commonwealth Games and WOM Adelaide, the pair teamed up to create Illuminate Adelaide, focusing on working with artists and creating experiences showcasing art, light, music and technology. This week, Ben had the opportunity to chat with co-founder and creative director Lee Cumberlidge to learn more about how the festival is boosting the festival scene after the pandemic.
The plan was really to activate the whole city with a program that's all about the convergence of art, light, music and technology. And so, as you've mentioned, we do have this massive free program that's over 40 interactive installations and experiences placed throughout the kind of north, east and west end precincts throughout the CBD. And that's all about just getting on our interactive map on your phone and sort of navigating the city, getting out and about, seeing the program, maybe stopping into your favourite bars and restaurants. So really kind of trying to support activity back in the CBD after COVID. But then we also have a huge program of ticketed major immersive experiences and exhibitions, as well as a massive music program as well. So it's, as I said, it's really about bringing these art forms of music, art and technology together and really kind of lighting up and activating Adelaide in the wintertime.
So what sort of impression did you want to make to the people when they go around and see the Illuminate show? These kind of the discussions you have within the planning process?
I think, the impression we're trying to make is that, events like ours are really for everybody. Our program is all about embracing the cold and getting out in winter, but it's also about doing that and sharing those experiences in the public domain. Our show Light Cycles in the Botanic Gardens and the new exhibition Wisdom of AI Light that's inside the Illuminate Pavilion on Rundle Road. These are ticketed experiences that are really for all ages and they're very accessible as well.
Do you think being one of the biggest winter festivals around at the moment, do you think COVID's really played a part in the kind of levels of participation? Do you think people just want to get out of the house and experience something a little bit different?
Look, I think that's part of it. I think COVID has definitely created, extra demand for, experiences like what we're offering. Created extra demand for people to travel as well. So we're hopefully seeing a lot of people come into the state to visit us during these next few weeks. But I think that was also the case last year. We did do our first Illuminate Adelaide right in the middle of the pandemic, and we even had a lockdown right in the middle of the event last year, and people came straight back out afterwards. So, I think events like ours, festivals in general, will play a really important role in reactivating our city and cities around the world, in the sort of post-COVID recovery phase.
Coming into the second year there, you'd probably have a bit of a different perspective as to how you want to approach it. Do you have any techniques to how you really stay relevant? And I guess there's new technologies as well to kind of enhance the experience.
Yeah, our program is all about the convergence of art and technology, and I think we sort of try to present things that are at the forefront of what's happening in this space. Artists that are really using technology in interesting ways. The Wisdom of AI Light exhibition in the projection pavilion we've built on Rundle Road is a really great example. Our studio from Istanbul are using artificial intelligence to learn from and process huge amounts of data, and then use that to create these incredibly immersive artwork. Another example is Unsound Adelaide, which we're bringing back to Adelaide as part of Illuminate this year. here. This is a cutting-edge, experimental, international music program that we collaborate with Unsound in Poland to present here in Adelaide. And, this is all about music that's right at the forefront, the future of music, really, in terms of experimental and electronic. Rachel and I spend a lot of time, researching what the artists that we're looking at presenting and inviting to the Adelaide program. And we also, now that the borders are back open again, we'll be travelling to experience some of these artworks, installations and experiences ourselves. So we sort of try to stay ahead of the curve and in knowing what's happening all over the world and bring the best of it back to Adelaide.
Wavelength.
Thanks for that, Grace and Ben. It's great to have festival season back. It feels like after March, we kind of die in Adelaide for like a couple months, but it's good. I'm keen.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to go outside of March Madness and do something in another part of the year.
Yeah, I'm definitely not wearing beanies to Fringe, but I'm very happy to go see the lights. It's good.
I think it's sort of taking the sting out of the weather too. Like, it's miserable weather, but we can go look at pretty lights.
Yeah, it's nice
and
to
have
go
some drinks.
Exactly.
That's
the most important thing. But it's nice to go out and do something, and it's really exciting for Illuminate to travel Australia and travel the world, and I'm really excited for it to come back to Adelaide.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, don't go anywhere. Up next, we speak to a fabulous drag queen right here in Adelaide. You're listening to Wavelength.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking convos about Adelaide you should be having.
You may have heard about drag through RuPaul's Drag Race or other TV shows, but Adelaide does in fact have a thriving and vibrant drag community. To learn more, Maggie speaks with one of the queens of SA.
Wavelength.
Kane Enable has made a name as a talented performer around the country, and we sat down and discussed Adelaide's vibrant drag scene.
I've been doing drag for the past 3 years here in Adelaide at the fabulous Marys Poppins, and it's something that comes with so many new experiences.
What attracted you to becoming a drag performer?
I've been going to Marys since it opened. Most of my friends were the drag queens that performed there. It's like Wounds, Eve L, and Lucy Firth, and soon they became my sisters because I just decided that I wanted to get up there and perform alongside them.
Did you find it difficult to make a name for yourself in Adelaide?
Because I was a part of the Marys team before I started doing drag, I already had the connections, and so it's definitely a case of it's not what you know, it's who you know, but also I do know how to do drag very well. So that also helps. In Adelaide, it's such a small community. There is difficulty, but I think you just got to reach out and sometimes make your own opportunities.
Is the industry in Adelaide self-sufficient?
It's one of those industries where you get out of it what you put into it. Adelaide is a small queer community. It just comes down to what you want to do. I mean, the internet is there at everyone's fingertips, so you don't have to have a space in person to explore your drag. You can do everything online. So it just really depends on what you're willing to do and how much you care about it.
What does drag do for the queer community?
Drag has always been the underground way that people express themselves, and it's been around for so much longer than I think anyone realizes, and I think a lot of queens realize. It's become such a phenomenon. They say that drag queens held up the pillars of pop culture within the queer community. So I definitely think that it still has that importance. We're the faces of so many gay bars around the world. They're on all the posters, they're on the advertisements. Drag is very much the face of so many things when it comes to nightlife in the queer community. So I think that's important for people to see and to recognise and respect.
How important is it to have these kinds of role models for the LGBTQ plus youth of today?
Drag queens weren't always meant to be role models for the younger generation, queer youth or youth in general, but since RuPaul's Drag Race has become such a worldwide thing, there is this expectation of queens to be role models. And you can pick and choose things from drag culture of which to inspire by. The biggest lesson to be learned is self-expression, and art is something to admire. I think that's the main thing that the queer youth can get out of it, that they're seeing people be completely who they are while putting on a good show.
So you've performed interstate. How have your experiences in other places compared to the Adelaide scene?
We're very lucky here in Adelaide to have one of the best performance spaces and one of the best clubs, being Marys Poppins. It's queer owned and operated, which some of the other big names in queer nightlife that people recognise around Australia are not actually queer owned and operated. So we're very lucky here at Marys. We have it so good. But it is very interesting being in those different spaces, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth and Brisbane for myself. I do think that some of those states are a little bit further along with respecting drag queens and understanding the efforts that go into it, whereas here in Adelaide we've only got the one nightclub and then we've got a few bars that have popped up recently. We're slowly opening ourselves up to the idea that queer nightlife and drag can really take take over the States.
People often refer to the old drag and the new drag. In your 3 years performing, have you noticed that there's been a development in drag, or have you seen a shift towards that newer version of drag?
The quote-unquote old drag is all that I would see here in Adelaide. And I definitely think there's just so many young queer people getting into drag. So you could label that new drag, but it's all drag. Drag was never one thing or the other. To me, it's always a bit weird to call it old drag, new drag, because, I mean, there's some new queens that come out that take so much inspiration from the old queens. There's some old queens, quote-unquote, that are doing new things. There is definitely a difference, but I think it's more people are working out what audiences want more, what they enjoy, and drag is very much based in pop culture and what's relevant at the time. It's been around for so long and it just changes with the times, period. It's not ever going to be its own isolated old and new.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
The only other thing I would say is that people should get out and experience drag. Come see drag. We're on stage every weekend dancing our little tushies off. So if you enjoy watching it on TV, you'd enjoy watching it so much more in real life.
Wavelength.
Thanks, Kane Enable and Maggie. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. Before the break, you heard Maggie speak with Kane Enable about Adelaide's drag scene, and now she is speaking with Rachel Hosking, co-owner of My Lover Cindi, which is one of Adelaide's few wheelchair-friendly bars, to learn more about the space.
Wavelength.
My name's Rachel. I co-own our little queer utopia, My Lover Cindi, with my partner Kate. We've recently got married, so we are both business partners and partners. My background is a bit of a mixed bag. I have been in and out of hospitality through most of my late teens, 20s, etc. Background in banking as well, and an undergraduate degree that I've very nearly finished in psychology, which is this really weird mesh of interests that have led me to opening my own venue alongside Kate, who has a strong history in social work. It was actually a really organic fusion of our passions.
So for someone who has never been to the bar, what would they expect walking in for the first time?
Look, we like to think that people walking in for the first time will just feel welcome. It is a cosy, intimate space. It's wheelchair accessible. We've got such a diverse range of entertainment that, you know, it's not going to be exactly the same thing every single time someone comes in. But the overarching feeling that we hope people have is just feeling welcome and excited to participate in whatever we've got on for the night. Everyone's welcome at the venue, so we are an LGBTIQ space, but allies and people who are friends of LGBTIQ people are definitely welcome. We just want everyone to come on in and have a drink and say hi.
The thing that stands out about your venue is how all-inclusive it is. Why did you see the need for a space like this in Adelaide?
Just honestly through a major lack of wheelchair-friendly venues. Our city has a lot of heritage-listed buildings and things like that. A lot of nightclubs particularly are downstairs and little basements tucked away, etc. So we just wanted to fill that gap a bit and be able to provide at least somewhere that was going to be wheelchair accessible for people who do use mobility aids to be able to come in and participate in a really vibrant night space. So that's how it came about.
Why do you think spaces for queer and other minority groups are so important in a wider social context?
I think it's just important to be able to provide somewhere that people know is safe. I think moving into 2022, a lot of people do feel generally okay in heteronormative spaces, and that's fantastic. The end goal is for people to be able to go anywhere, anytime, and to not feel marginalised by whatever identities that they are. People are complex, and there's a whole range of reasons why people may not feel safe or want to particularly participate in more heteronormative spaces. So it's just really important that we continue to offer somewhere that people know that they are welcome, no questions asked.
What separates this space from gay bars that used to exist around Adelaide in the past? Do you think that there has been a shift in queer culture in the last 10 years?
For sure. I think that's a really valid question, especially with the rise of things like Drag Race. It's become a very popular part of queer communities that has bled out into more mainstream culture, which again is fantastic because things like that create tolerance. But at the same time, it means that I guess our offering is a little bit more alternative. So people who may not feel like they can participate in that more mainstream type of accepted way of being a queer person that we see in a lot of big gay bars. We're for everyone else, and the community is so diverse. So it's really nice to see lots of little venues popping up that cater to other ways of being a queer person outside of what is historically and currently still a very important part of our community in drag.
Do you have any future aspirations, or are you looking to expand the business?
In terms of expansion, we absolutely love where we are, and our goal is just to continue to build our offering in terms of entertainment, potentially be opening more than what we are at the moment. At the moment, we generally trade Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, but we really do love our little venue and how it is a little bit more intimate. It still is able to provide so much in terms of entertainment.
Wavelength.
Thanks for that, Maggie and Rachel.
So much fun. Have you guys been to Marys?
Only once and a while ago, like freshly 18.
And
I've never actually been. People keep trying to make me go. I don't get out much as it is, but yeah.
How am I the straight one here? And I've been at least 24 times. Come on, guys.
I haven't been to a gay bar since Mars Bar shut down. I don't know what happened to me.
I don't even know what that is. I think I'm too young for this.
What's it, like Goodger Street or something?
Yeah.
Like, that was back in the day when Adelaide had one gay bar. It had one gay bar that people went to, and it was that
I'm a
one.
baby. I know none of this.
Like, I'd never went, but in high school it was known that, like, there's bars in the city, and then there's the Mars Bar, which is the gay bar. And it was as simple as that. It was like, that was where the gay bar was.
It sounds like a hoot. I wish I could go.
I mean, as we found out in those interviews there, I think we're getting a bit wider, there's a better spread, we're getting more wheelchair access, bigger scene, and I think we should, like, be very grateful for that.
Have you ever noticed an old bomber plane in the hangar by the airport's long-term car park? Right after the break, we have Brayden explaining the history and future of the Vickers Vimy aircraft in Adelaide.
Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Wavelength.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Fresh. You're listening to Wavelength. Now, newbie on the team, Brayden, uses his deep baritone voice to talk to us about something we should care about in the history of Australia.
Wavelength Explains on Fresh 92.7.
If you have ever parked in the long-term car park at the Adelaide Airport and walked past a really old green plane in its own little building, you've probably just shrugged your shoulders and walked off. What you may not have known though is that old green plane is one of the most famous aircrafts in Australian aviation history. The Vickers Vimy GEAOU won the 1919 Great Air Race, and by doing so became the first aircraft to fly from England to Australia. And now, over 100 years later, the plane is on the move once again, with it being disassembled and now being carefully reassembled at a brand new location inside the Adelaide Airport terminal as part of its $200 million expansion project. Now, I know what you're thinking, who cares, it's just some old plane. But let's put this journey into context. At the time, Qantas hadn't even been founded yet. The flight itself took almost a month to do, and all up, these pioneers were flying for 135 hours. And you thought your flight to LA was a pain? Then why do it, you ask? Well, if the sense of adventure and being the first doesn't interest you, maybe money does. Because in 1919, the Commonwealth Government of Australia offered a prize of £10,000 for any Australian airman who could fly a British-made aircraft from England to Australia in 30 days before midnight on the 31st of December 1920. That's almost $1 million in today's currency. Now, the Vimy was piloted by South Australian Ross McPherson Smith, and his brother Keith was the navigator. They were also joined on the trip by mechanic South Australian Sergeant Jim Bennett and Victorian Sergeant Wally Shires. These men would become huge celebrities, not just our state, but Australia-wide for their achievements. The Smith brothers were immediately knighted once they landed in Australia, while Jim and Wally were promoted to the rank of lieutenant. To top it all off as well, Ross shared the £10,000 prize money equally with the crew. Now, you may still be asking, why does this matter though? Well, because the long-term car park was the location for the Vimy, it meant it was often forgotten. Heck, a lot of people didn't even know it was there. And the simple fact is, if we are to appreciate the present, we must recognise the achievements of the past.
Wavelength.
Thanks for that, Brayden. That's really interesting, don't you think, Kieran?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've stood by that shed, early morning waiting for a flight, watching that plane, and it's good that it's finally getting some recognition and being moved to make the airport look a bit less grim.
Yeah, exactly. I'm excited for that the full redo, because I think it always needed an upgrade. 2005, when I first got to Australia, I remember thinking, like, what is this dusty shed of an airport with just desert around it? But the fact that they paid, you think around the world in 80 days is like fake, but literally the government just went like, yeah, we'll pay you 10 grand if you can make it from England to Australia on this plane, whatever. Why don't they do things like that now?
Yeah, exactly. What happened to the attitude of, we're doing stuff because we can?
Well, the news can be a little depressing at times, but don't stress. Up next, Angus goes through all the good news stories of the week.
You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. All this rain and cold weather we had recently can put you in a foul mood. Angus has some news stories that might brighten your Monday.
I know there's gonna be
Heaps good news on Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, where we sift through the misery of the everyday news to bring you some of the positives you might have missed this week. With the media pushing constant doom and gloom, we sometimes forget just how great things can be. That's where we come in, with the Heaps Good News Roundup. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is bringing back $750 COVID isolation payment in a massive win for casual work until September the 30th. Albanese has reversed his original decision, allowing the payments to lapse. Now they're saying that if the government forces you not to go to work because of public health orders, I fundamentally believe the government should compensate you. Meanwhile, a man's poor phone reception has resulted in a joey being rescued from an underground water storage tank on Kangaroo Island. Mr. Greenwood had to drive to the top of an isolated hill to find service and heard the scurrying of a joey that he estimates had been trapped for 2 days. In other news, a hidden self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh has been discovered via X-ray behind another one of his paintings in Scotland. The gallery curator said moments like this are incredibly rare. Vincent van Gogh was well known for using two sides of a canvas to save money and, of course, chopping off his own ear. In sports, South Aussie junior footballer and proud Aboriginal man Ash Johnson kicked 2 goals on debut for Collingwood on Friday. Lining up against his brother Shane McAdam, Johnson, a mid-season draftee, was key in devastating the Adelaide Crows by 5 points in a slippery affair at Adelaide Oval on Friday night. And that's all the good news for this week. Thanks for tuning in.
Wavelength.
Thanks for that, Angus. And that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thanks for listening.
Make sure you subscribe to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and tonight's episode will be up soon.
Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, as always.
In the notes here, you've written small chat about how much we love each other.
I just thought I'd show the love, guys.
Well, it's a pleasure as always, and thanks so much for tuning in this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having.
Wavelength.